Hey there! This is Nathan, filling in for Comic Drake. Today we're going to be discussing my all-time favorite hero in comics, Wonder Woman, specifically her antagonist. Wonder Woman's villains are among some of the more interesting in all of comics, but they're often one of the least known. So today we're going to be celebrating in no particular order some of my favorite antagonists to ever swear vengeance on the Amazon Avenger.
Let's start this party off with something big. How big, you ask? Big enough to be called Giganta. She is considered one of Wonder Woman's most iconic foes, and is armed with the ability to grow hundreds of feet in a matter of seconds. She was originally created in the 40s as a gorilla transmogrified into a strong woman, because comics. But Giganta actually owes most of her character and notoriety to the Challenge of the Super Friends cartoon of the late 70s, as she was a fairly obscure character prior to the show's success. Following the first major DC reboot of the 80s, Giganta was adjusted to better fit her cartoon persona, a move DC would pull again with the Mr. Freeze of the Batman animated series. The new Giganta was Doris Zuul, who, in order to escape death by vague blood disease, attempted to swap minds with Wonder Woman, but that failed. So she swapped the gorilla named Giganta instead. And then the gorilla swapped minds again with a strong woman named Olga, who secretly had the mutant ability to enlarge herself. Since becoming a villain, Giganta has spent most of her career as a mook, with little ambition of her own. Her intelligence wavers from writer to writer, though. Sometimes she's little more than a gurgling monster crushing buildings beneath her heel. Other times, she's smart enough to muse over her nature as a criminal and even date the Atom. Despite never having a definitive story, there is a certain magic that keeps drawing writer after writer back to her. To me, Giganta is the perfect example of a Wonder Woman villain. She's underutilized, totally unique, and more fun than comics have let themselves be for ages. No one but me cares about the Silver Swan. See, there are 3 Silver Swans. There's this chick Vanessa, who is a friend of Wonder Woman's that got turned into a brainwashed cyborg, but she is lame. There's also this girl Valerie, who is like a mutant with a jerk husband that experiments on her, so she becomes Black Canary with wings, but Valerie's lame too. So instead, I'm going to talk about my favorite Silver Swan, Helen Alexandros. See, Helen is a ballerina who can't find work because she looks like a makeup-free Mila Kunis. That's not a joke. I legitimately think she is drawn to look like Mila Kunis before Mila Kunis exists. Either way, the ballet studio doesn't think she's hot enough to dance for them, so she does the most extra thing imaginable and goes to a temple in Greece to scream at the Greek gods over her butterface. Meanwhile, Ares, the god of war, hears this and realizes someone this extra has to be related to me. Turns out she is. She's Ares' great something or other granddaughter, meaning she gets her own nepotism-based miracle. The god of war appears before her and gifts her with beauty beyond compare, supersonic powers, flight, and a showgirl's costume. There's a catch though. Turns out, Great-Grandpa War God is a Chungus muncher, and her perfection is just a 1-hour daily trial until she brings him the head of Wonder Woman. I love the idea of Silver Swan. Wonder Woman, more than any other hero in all of comics, is built around saving her villains from themselves. The idea being that each of them is a victim or symptom of how sick man's world is. It's not that Helen wishes to be evil or hurt Wonder Woman, it's that we as a society value beauty enough that she feels she has to kill for it. Silver Swan. She's a tragic tale of beauty, self-loathing, and sequin unitards, who, much like Silver Swan, need to make a return. What time is it, friendly friends? It's time for Circe, the demigod animorph witch of the Odyssey. Steeped in ancient myth, Circe is a figure of legend with one of those complicated Greek backstories involving 9 billion people, a retired god of moon witches, and a prophecy that makes her think Wonder Woman is going to eat her soul for some inexplicable reason. But for the most part, none of that matters, because what really carries Circe as an antagonist is her unparalleled deviousness. She just floats around, finding things to ruin. Are the gods having a good time? Circe will trick them into a civil war and steal their powers as they die. Is Wonder Woman experiencing general happiness? Circe turns into a whole other person for years in order to befriend Diana and then stab her in the back because screw happiness. Did the Amazons just experience a tragedy and lose their homeland? Time for Faustian pacts with an animal witch, leading to an Amazon civil war over what little they still own. I swear, this woman is at the heart of more civil wars than Tony Stark. And the best thing about it is that she loves it. She almost never gets anything out of these endeavors, but it makes her so happy. It's like she lives off bitter, petty cruelty. Circe. She's cunning, she's cool, she's the ancient Regina George of evil. How could you not love her? Real talk, once upon a time, America used to be slightly more racist than we are today, leading to some really uncomfortable bits of comic book history. One of the most popular forms of racism in comics was a phenomenon known as the Yellow Peril, where we genuinely thought the Chinese were going to swoop in and use their magical powers of being Chinese to eradicate our Western white people values. It's a disgusting bit of xenophobia that we have to acknowledge, not just because it is an ugly reality of our culture with a long-standing effect that we still feel to this day, but also because our next villain takes the idea of Yellow Peril and asks, you know what else is yellow? Eggs. Enter Egg Foo, the single most because comics character to ever exist. Egg Foo is a titanic, evil egg version of Fu Manchu that hatches new versions of himself in case of scrambling. When he was first created, Egg Foo had no origin. He was just a giant egg that was evil because he was Chinese. That was enough justification. It is worth noting that DC has made a visible effort to retool Egg Foo in recent history, pulling him away from his Yellow Peril origins by making him the stuff of my nightmares, jeepers creepers, and renaming him Changzhu. Despite the racism, Egg Foo is one of my favorite things in comics. The idea of a titanic, evil egg committing crimes is so quintessentially comics that I can't help but love him. It will never matter how gritty Batman gets, because Egg Foo exists in the same world and your tone is now silly. Egg Foo. What can I say other than you need to thank me for not spending this entire character making egg puns? You know Drake would've. And now for the villain you've all been waiting for. The creme de la creme of crime. The mistress of misgivings. It's time for the Cheetah! Oh my god, there's a lot of them. In the history of Wonder Woman, there have been a handful of cheetahs. The least interesting of these are the 1980s Debbie Domain, who was a strawman eco-terrorist, and the 2001 Sebastian Ballesteros, who was a strawman businessman. These two generally don't matter, but it's occasionally cool to see their existence referenced. The real cheetahs are Priscilla Rich and Barbara Ann Minerva. Now, Priscilla is the original and holds a special place in my heart. See, she was a dancer who got so salty about Wonder Woman upstaging her that she develops a Two-Face-like personality disorder that has general cheetah powers for unexplained reasons. It was an interesting dynamic where Priscilla genuinely wanted treatment and control over her life, but the cheetah only wanted Wonder Woman's destruction. She was vicious and tragic, and fans loved her. It was a cool setup for a villain, and back in 1943, there hadn't really been anything like her. She quickly earned the title of Wonder Woman's archenemy, and to this day, remains one of my favorite villains in all of comics. However, Cheetah is a weird example of a successful legacy villain. While it's not uncommon for villainous identities to be passed on to new criminals, it almost always returns to the original owner before too long. But in 1987, DC Comics would introduce Barbara Ann Minerva as the new permanent Cheetah. She was a spoiled, archaeology-obsessed heiress who performed a dark ritual with human sacrifice in exchange for cheetah-based powers. Normally, the African plant god Urshkarataga would hand these powers out no problem to the virgin offerings he took as brides. But Minerva, having been deflowered, didn't meet his usual criteria, so he made her powers a curse. Minerva would forever suffer from crippling pain in her human form, but so long as she remained in the cheetah form, her savagery would grow and grow until she lost all control. As I said before, Minerva remains the cheetah to this day, and most comic fans would identify her as the definitive version of the character. I personally never thought she held a candle to the tragedy of Priscilla Rich. But Minerva is rooted in what made the original Cheetah work so well. It has always been my personal belief that in comics, the difference between an enemy and an archenemy is that an archenemy encaptures something better than anyone else. For Joker, it's nihilism. For Luthor, it's pride. For Captain Cold, it's his code. And for Cheetah, it's always been ferocity. Priscilla always had that, but you could never see her eating the flesh of Wonder Woman's friends or slaughtering children to get under Diana's skin. I truly do think there's a perfect Cheetah, somewhere in between Priscilla's tragedy and Minerva's savagery. But until that perfect Cheetah is born, you'll always spot me cheering on the two I love.
Are there any villains today that we covered that were your favorites? Are there any Wonder Woman villains that we missed that you wish we had talked about? Leave a comment below, talk about Wonder Woman, that's what this is really all about. And if you enjoy the content that we're putting out, please consider supporting us on Patreon because we are desperate for money. And if you liked today's video, please consider subscribing to us or checking out some of the other wonderful videos we've made in the past. And until next time, friendly friends, hope you have a wonderful day.